All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, especially after a wonderful parade yesterday. I'm sure you all had a great time, as did I. I know we've said it before, but part of the way that we are able to make things like that happen is with our amazing vendor partners. Allie is one of those. So she's one of the amazing reasons that yesterday happened, but also she's a reason that we are able to serve our clients so well. She is here to be a resource not only to our business, but to our clients as well. And so understanding what's happening in the market is the best way we can advocate for them, the best way we can have meaningful, engaging conversations with people about what's happening in the market and what we're seeing, and a great way for us to connect with our existing or past clients so that we can have educated conversations about what's happening in the refinance world, which is why we have sessions like this so that we can hear in real time from Allie what's happening in the field, and to answer any questions that we have about all of that. So, Allie, thank you for being with us. Allie is a preferred vendor, not only, but she's also with Movement Mortgage. I failed to say that. So, you guys have seen her before. I'll be sure to include her contact info when this recording goes out. But, Allie, thank you.
Thanks for having me as always. And anybody on the call, if you want to turn on your cameras and unmute at any time, please do. This is meant for a conversation. So don't hesitate to bump, what is that word? Interrupt me. But a few things we like to kind of start off with is, of course, some rate updates. So let's jump into that. So I pulled it today. It's not active today, so it's kind of probably based off yesterday, but right now we're at about 6.38 for a 30-year fixed. If you haven't heard me say it before, I'll say it again. It's Mortgage News Daily is definitely my go-to. It will give you a good nationwide average best case scenario. So obviously these rates aren't going to be for every single client, but it gives you a good idea so you can advise your clients. And they have a really good app to download that you can kind of have on the go and pull up and tell your clients when you're out shopping for homes. But right now we're right there. We're pretty steady. This chart kind of tells you daily rates where it's been. So as you can see, it's been pretty stable and consistent with where it's been at. The biggest drop was right in the beginning of September when we dropped significantly and a lot of refinances came about too. And we could get to even rates of 5.99, 5.875. Obviously, as you can see, it's kind of dropped again once when we were around the Fed meeting. But the Fed meeting doesn't necessarily always mean that it correlates with the mortgage rates, which a lot of people misunderstand. So it's more on the actual economic news, like jobs reports. So with the jobs report and the Fed meeting all happening around the same time, it definitely jumped back up, as you can see, and it's been pretty stable since then. So all that to say, everything I read and hear about, it's going to continue that way. I know there's a lot of talk about another cut, and that's going to make mortgage rates drop, and that's when borrowers want to start shopping or when people want to refinance, but that might not necessarily be the case. So again, just kind of educating them on not necessarily waiting for things that people are saying in the news, or just a misconception of what the Fed meetings actually could mean. So that's where we're at there. Again, this chart is just showing from when we kind of basically last chatted last month, from the beginning of September until now. Any questions on that? Okay. So as expected, refis definitely lessened. In fact, the mortgage applications to purchase a home fell 1%. for just the week, but they still are up year over year. So people are still buying homes. Um, and again, refinances dropped as expected. But it doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't still look at some of your past clients, especially, like I said, last month from like end of 22 to beginning of 23 is where we see the highest rates. So if they haven't refinanced yet, at least having that conversation and maybe just actually having some kind of game plan because rates can drop in a day and then turn right around as we saw again for like the third time this year. It was just a day or two where it was a really good time to jump into a refinance. So people that are prepared to do that and strike when it's hot, then you can be the hero in the long run because you're the one that kind of contacted them and let them know that that's something they should consider or at least have a conversation about, right? So definitely a good reason to reach out to your past clients. Um, and then a lot of you guys collaborated here and talk about some of these things on the Monday call, but I wanted to kind of give you a good glimpse of what I have seen in the contracts that I've gotten in the last 2 weeks. And so these are all, this is kind of a chart to kind of show you the overview of what is kind of happening and maybe some trends. Especially if you're like a newer agent and you're just not sure about, advising your clients on due diligence and earnest money and seller credits and that sort of thing. Obviously, you have so many resources at choice, but and it depends on the city and neighborhood and everything, right? So this kind of just, I wanted to give you a little overview of at least what I've been seeing. Again, the last couple of weeks in different cities, different price points. So it really, I think it's pretty, consistent-ish with like the 2,000 to 5,000 for due diligence. As you can see, there was a couple higher, obviously 10,000 earnest money, which is nice to see with earnest money versus the due diligence that we've been, seeing back when it was crazy. But those were kind of two one-offs, but overall, I think it's been pretty consistent. Again, with seller credits, I'm still seeing them come in. On my end, I always talk about just offsetting closing costs with those credits, and also a chance to either do a permanent buy down or a temporary rate buy down, depending on how much seller credit you're getting, right? So even a little bit helps buy down that rate, even if it's that, $2,500, you can still do a little something with that and help make your buyer's monthly payment much lower, which is always the most important factor for buyers. Any questions on that? Is this what you guys are seeing out there? Is there anything kind of one-off that you are seeing that kind of was a win? Or tell me about what you guys are seeing, especially about seller credits. I'm interested. No. Okay.
Allie, I have a question. If no one's
Yeah.
chiming in with their experiences, so is this just from like your deals over the past week? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is solely from me pulling up the last couple of contracts that I got in just the past 2 weeks. So
Yeah, I'm just so, I mean, I don't, this is more of a just like wow comment. I don't know, the file is just arriving on your desk, right? So I'm sure you might not hear too much, but I am just really surprised to see a $0 due diligence. Obviously, a $10,000 earnest money is sizable. Um, but then, they're still asking for $5,000 in seller concessions. So I'm just surprised at all. Not that you would typically hear, but did you have any insight on like, was that a back and forth? Did they, I don't know, any comments on that, or did it just like,
so it's a super quick due diligence.
what
We
is
were
super quick?
um think it was the, I just got it the other day and it was October 15th. So what's that, next Wednesday or
That's like a
something?
week. Okay.
So yeah, a week. I think maybe 10 days. So we were kind of worried about getting that appraisal requested ASAP. Ended up having an appraisal waiver and they're only putting 10% down. So that was a huge win. But yes, Apex, that what I thought that was crazy. $5,000 seller credit probably had something to do with that they're doing a seller possession. They're not technically doing rent on that addendum, but the sellers are staying in the home for, it's not that long. I think it's like 2 weeks or something like that. But that was definitely surprising on my end for due diligence too.
Yeah, especially with the higher price point than some of the others, but that's so
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I know we
Yep.
hear about appraisal waivers fairly regularly, but it can be hit or miss. I know sometimes it's a surprise or news to you guys as well, but do you have any indication on what those scenarios are where that's a potential? Is that something
Mm-hmm.
that buyers and agents need to proactively ask for, or is it just something that when you go to order the appraisal, great news, we heard this back
Mm-hmm.
from them?
Yeah, it's nothing that anybody can really prepare for or try to do. It's literally we put in the property address and run it through our automated underwriting system and it pops up magically with either good news or just, business as usual. But before they recently did a change to that system and I feel like it's triggered more appraisal waivers than I've ever seen, especially if you're putting less than 20% down, because it used to be there's no way you're getting one unless you put 20% down or more. And the more you put down, like if you put 50% down, it was very likely you're going to get one. But also, the other layer to that was if an appraisal has been done in the last 7 years. So if you look at the property history and the home sold, 2 years ago, that's going to be a high likelihood, especially if they're putting a decent amount down, that you might get one.
Interesting. Yeah, I was curious if it had anything to do with how the home was priced. Like if the automated system
Mhm.
runs the numbers and sees that contract price and they're like, oh, that's
Mhm.
crazy high versus, right in line with the market, but that all makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that might have, they might see based on that last appraisal done, that sort of numbers, the value that we put in versus the last purchase price, um, that it sold for. So, or last home value or whatever it appraised for. But it's only on conventional. So you can forget about it with FHA or VA or USDA, but conventional, and it's even it differs between Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac too. We run both systems to see, so I could go on both of them or could just pop up on one of them for the same exact scenario. So it is kind of crazy, but the biggest like new thing for me is that we're seeing it for two in the last week I've gotten, we're only 10% down. So that's wild to me.
Interesting. And then last question on this topic before we move on. I know we were talking about how short that due diligence period is. I know there are options to get an appraisal rushed, even then
Mm-hmm.
it can be kind of tight. What is the increased fee or like the difference in price for an appraisal like that? Because you normally have to pay a rush fee. What
Mm-hmm.
is that? And what is the turnaround time, just in case we wanted to provide that as an option to our buyers when they go under contract?
Yeah, no, that was definitely the plan for this one. And it's usually about 150 to $200 more expensive. And the turnaround time is supposed to be 3 business days. I always say 5 because by the time it depends on the timing of when the appraiser gets it and accepts it too. So by the time we request it, an appraiser accepts it and they get us the report back. But I've certainly seen as quick as 3 days and average about 5 days. So
Wow. Yeah, that's fast.
I
Cool.
have a
Yeah.
quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that the case with any type of loan? Because I'm currently have a VA loan out and I didn't know about an appraisal rush. Is that possible with those?
That's going to be really hard because they're already super slow.
Okay.
You can ask depending on the lender, but ultimately the VA has to still get the report and review it. And that's a whole nother layer. So I have one that I ordered last week and it's not due back until the end of next week. So like a full 2 weeks is usually what the timing is for VA. And it depends on where it is too, if it's, right in Raleigh or rural, but they have a limited pool of appraisers that are certified to do VA and FHA. So there's that. And then the layer of VA actually having to look at it and sign off on it too.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're dealing with. All right, thank you.
yeah. And crazy enough, the VA appraisals, the fee is set for the counties, and for Wake County, it's $800 for an appraisal for VAs, which is, I mean, it's like $650 for a regular conventional, $575 for an FHA, but $800 is pretty hefty, especially when you're talking about a veteran. So that's actually where this $800 seller credit came in here, because this was a VA. So they asked for the seller basically to cover the appraisal, offset that cost. Any other questions or scenarios or anything that you guys want to bring up? Okay. So another thing that I just wanted to bring up was just like the power of connection instead of just blindly referring, whether it's me or your other lender partner or anybody that you are like the realtors. I feel like you're the circle, the center of the circle, right? And you're giving all your referrals out, and your buyers are listening to whatever you say. And I think using a group text or email to make that warm introduction, especially to your lender partners, is huge. Even to your closing attorneys too, because I don't know how many times I have buyers that are having to fill out the loan disclosures and they have no idea who their closing attorney is. And that the attorney is gonna send the forms to fill out and whatnot for the intake. But just that quick group email, text, whatever you prefer, whatever they prefer, to make that warm introduction. It is, I can tell you hands down, it will be much more at ease for the borrower, less stressful, smoother, and the conversion rate is much bigger. And not only that, but you're giving your lender, your referral partner, whoever you're referring, and your buyer that accountability, and you're always looped in. So I say that a lot, but I really I think I know it's the best type of conversion. I know your clients appreciate that too. And I also preach about having a process. This is just kind of a quick image I send out to some borrowers, and some realtors use it to send out to their buyers or have it in their buyer consultation packet. I think it gives your clients, especially the ones that have anxiety about buying a home, just that much more ease, that it is, a process that we take one step at a time, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Even just to get started is just a quick, 15-minute call. And a lot of people think it's going to be just super overwhelming to apply for a mortgage loan. So I try to personally make it as painless as possible. So if you want this graphic and you want to have it in your buyer packet, or just to have to send out for social media or whatever, let me know and I'm happy to send it over to you. But not only like my process, but setting up processes and systems for your clients in general for the home buying process or the listing side of things too. I'm like a nerd and geek out about all that kind of stuff. So I'm always happy to like help you set up that type of process and system too, on like the real estate side. I've been in this business long enough where I've had trials and errors, and I kind of can see what works and what doesn't work. I know it's getting towards the end of the year, and the new year will come upon us quicker than we probably want. And it's always a new time to reflect and kind of get a system in place. And I don't want to just be your lender partner. I want to be your partner, period. So if that means sitting down and helping, at least come up with some ideas for a process, I'm happy to do that.
Allie, is that a document that you could send our way? And I can include it in the recording email. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Did you have anything else for us today?
That's all I have. So if anybody has any questions, then please speak up.
Cool. I do have one.
Yeah.
I met with a client yesterday. This might be a silly question, but I was just curious, are all FHA loans assumable, or is it just certain ones? They are sellers and,
Yeah,
don't.
so FHA and VA, any assumable loan will still need to go through the servicer that holds the loan as far as verifying that they can qualify and whatnot. 99% of them are going to be assumable, but it just depends on, that servicer's requirements for qualification and actually assuming the loan. Because it's not like they would come to me for the new loan. They would have to go and actually go with whoever holds that loan.
Right. So if the sellers have a FHA loan, I'm assuming you're saying they just need to reach out to their loan holder and say like, hey, is this assumable? Or us just knowing that it's FHA, we should assume that
Yeah,
already.
it's definitely assumable. Yeah.
Okay.
I would make sure as far as the list side, the seller side, then that they know about what their estimated principal balance is. And that way the buyers then know what kind of gap there is, if any.
Sounds good. What else y'all got?
I have another question.
Yeah.
What is the typical average, or can you give any examples of how much people are actually saving when they're refinancing right now?
It really depends and ranges. But I had a client who will close later this month. Their savings was about $350 a month. They were at 7.25%, and we locked them in at 5.99, I believe, or 6.125. I think we ended up at.
Nice. Okay.
And I've talked to a lot of clients where some will want to pull that trigger if they're saving $100 a month, and other ones that are like, I'm not going to do it until I'm saving like $500 a month. So it also ranges when it comes to the actual borrower and how much they think it's worth it. But I mean, in the long run, I think people have this conception that a refinance is super expensive, and it's really not that expensive. I would say it's maybe like $2,500 in fees and stuff when it comes to like not just the lender, but the appraisal and attorney fees. So, and a lot of people will roll that in and not even have any out-of-pocket cost.
Okay, nice, thanks.
Anyone else? All right, y'all. Thank you for spending your morning with us. If you have questions, feel free to send them Allie's way. We'll get this recording out to you either today or tomorrow. Included in that will be her contact info. We'll get that resource your way as well. And as always, as you run into things in the real world, keep us in the loop. That's how we all stay fresh and advocate for our clients. So appreciate you guys spending time with us. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Allie.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.